How Should a Body Be? Author discussion with Bethany Meloche.
Has anyone ever told you that you do something funny? Not ha-ha funny. More like different funny. You walk funny, you talk funny, you hold your spoon funny. It can even be a good thing, like laughing. Hey, you laugh funny. And now all of a sudden you're self-conscious about laughing. All sorts of things about us people may tell us are funny. It's usually a surprise when people point these differences out to us. Because when we're growing up, everything about us is normal. My laugh is how laughs are. My family is how families are. And my body is how bodies are. As we grow, we learn that it's not true that everything is the same. Things are actually different everywhere. Not necessarily right or wrong, or better or worse, just different. But even if we know this intellectually, when someone tells us that something about us is funny, we usually immediately become self-conscious about it. If someone were to tell you that you laugh funny, you might stop laughing, which would be a huge shame. When I was 6 years old, my friend and I decided to run a race. And I put all of my little 6-year-old body into it, and I ran as hard as I could, which was hard. But all I could see the entire time was the back of my friend as she got further and further and further ahead of me. I finished a long time after my friend, not even close. And after the race, another kid said to me, "Why do you run so funny?" Now, I didn't even know what this kid was talking about. I wasn't running funny. I was running. Just like everyone else. Although maybe a little bit more slowly. When I was 6, I thought my grandma was perfect. Because she was. She had this giant green plastic frog filled with toys that she kept in her kitchen at all times. She spoiled me. She was always ready to play. And she made the best spaghetti in the universe. I'm pretty sure the secret ingredient was sugar. Grandma never let it spill, but. And Grandma also wore leg braces. Don't all grandmas wear leg braces? It must just be one of those things grandmas need as they get older. My grandma is how grandmas are. I didn't know then that my grandma had a progressive nerve disease called Charcot-Marie-Tooth. I didn't know then that my dad had it too. And so did I. Dad tells me that people told him he ran funny when he was 6 too. And he also didn't believe them. So, why do you run so funny? I know the answer now. I have a duplication of gene Pmp22 on chromosome 17 that results in demyelination and peripheral neuropathy. At least that's what the neurologists tell me. But it's not really that helpful, is it? Because when what is funny about you is something physical, is about your body, it feels especially personal. And as I grew, a question grew in my mind, which was, how should a body be? As I shared my stories with others, I discovered something really interesting, which is all sorts of people seem to be asking themselves this question. And it seems that everywhere, people are convinced that how a body should be certainly isn't how their body actually is. This has been such a recurring question in my life that I finally had to write about it. I'm going to read you a short story from my book that took place over 10 years ago in Ann Arbor, where I first saw myself as others did, thanks to an encounter with an old woman. The old woman. The hill was small. I know that in retrospect, and did then too, but the slight incline made walking an even more exhausting process than it already was. I was 14 now and was headed to the Power Center for the Performing Arts, a playhouse in Ann Arbor, where my freshman class was going to see Julius Caesar. Walking had gotten harder since I had been diagnosed with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease a year and a half before. It wasn't a slow decline, but it was subtle. A gradual worsening every day that I didn't even recognize was happening until I found myself thinking, wait, I don't remember this hill being so hard to walk up before. Actually, I don't even remember a hill being here at all. It was a small hill, not really a hill at all. And when I looked around at my gaggle of classmates, they didn't seem to realize we were going up a hill either. Their movements looked effortless, while I felt like I was trudging through mud with each step. The kind of mud that sticks to you in thick glops, pulling you back down with it, refusing to let you go. The kind of mud that, when you finally get a leg out of its grasp, the freedom is a brief moment before you have to set that leg back down in the mud again and repeat. But just as that invisible mud refused to let me walk with ease, I refused to fall too far behind, to single myself out from the group or to let them see that something was wrong. My classmates wouldn't know. Couldn't know. I could see the Power Center now. It wasn't an immediately impressive building, not the kind you stop to look at. A perfect rectangle, it had a flat concrete roof, light gray, and wide concrete columns along its exterior. The concrete gave it a subdued appearance and an unpretentious quality, but its true beauty was in the floor-to-ceiling windows that lined the front of the building. I saw her then, in the grand windows of the Power Center. She was old, probably at least in her 70s or 80s, judging by the frailty I could recognize even in her flickering reflection. Is it impolite to stare at someone if she can't see you? A small, evil part of me was glad to see that someone else recognized we were going up a hill, and that there was someone struggling much more than I was, and much more visibly. This was only a small consolation, given that she was about 80, but it was a consolation nonetheless. My eyes stayed mostly cast down toward my feet, making sure I didn't trip, but whenever I could, I grabbed a quick, stolen glance at her, my new companion, in my peripheral vision. She was hunched over, and in the glass I could see her struggle as she made her way up the hill. More than just seeing, I could feel her struggle as I watched her take her slow, calculated, small steps. She had probably been strong once, tall, with effortless steps, but time and age had taken their toll, as they always do. She was heading up to the power center too, and as my classmates and I got closer to those expansive glass windows, her reflection grew too and became clear. Suddenly, I found myself face to face with her. She looked back at me, confused, blinked twice. There had never been an old woman. I had been looking at my own reflection the whole time. It wasn't long after that first encounter with my reflection that I was having such a hard time having the energy to attend school that I left high school and started attending community college where I could create a more flexible schedule. And I made an executive decision to decide that what I saw in the glass that day had just been a trick of light. Even at 15, I was already an expert in denial. And speaking of things I would like to forget, my last day of high school hadn't gone well. Let's just say I left an impression. I like to think now that somewhere out there in the world, there's an old classmate of mine saying, I have the weirdest memory of a girl falling and knocking over 3 gallons of paint. Yeah. And flailing around in it until the paramedics carried her away. Did that really happen? Yeah, that really happened. So I was looking forward to this new start. I said to myself, college is going to be a chance for reinvention. College is going to be so much better and smarter and cooler. In college, they're not going to leave open paint cans just laying around. They've got it together. And most importantly, I decided that in college, I was going to be a Bethany without Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. Expert in denial, once again. And as you all could probably predict, that fantasy lasted just a couple weeks into my first semester. It's a Friday afternoon, and I am lying on the concrete in front of the Language, Arts, and Sciences building. How did we get here? Well, the day had started fine. I'd gone to my classes, chem, bio, writing, and I was on my way out of the building. Now, we live in a fairly reasonable society, one that recognizes that this disability thing is really a drag, and so we get a few perks, like those magical blue parking passes, which really just mean everyone wants to do their Christmas shopping with you. Yeah, it's true. You get so many new friends you never knew you had. And also doors that magically open on their own. Wonderful. Of course, I say these are perks, but for many of us, these things are absolute necessities. And on this day, this Friday afternoon, I was enjoying one of these well-earned privileges. So I approached the friendly-looking automatic handicap door, and I pressed the friendly-looking automatic handicap door button, and the door swung open for me dutifully. It was going so well. There are many risks in my day-to-day life. A gust of wind, a slippery floor, someone texting on their phone and bumping into me. But I didn't expect on this day to be taken down by a handicap door that was moving a little faster than I was. That traitor. You think you can count on him. So here I am bruised, embarrassed, on the ground, glaring at the door. But I tell myself, at least nobody saw it happen. There's another rather immediate problem, which is I can't get off the ground. But there's no way that my 15-year-old self is going to stop another student passing by and say, "Help, help, I've been knocked over by the handicap door and I can't get back up." Not going to happen. So instead, my plan B is to try to look like I just do my best thinking on the ground. So I sit cross-legged and I just try to look rather zen. Just, I may have been a little bit more conspicuous than I thought, because a few minutes later, I open my eyes and look up to see the face of a campus police officer. This can't be good. And I start to tell him immediately, no, I'm fine. Please, wait, what are you? But it is too late. And he is already shouting loudly into his walkie-talkie, "We have a girl down! A girl down! I need backup! Seriously." And shockingly, within 30 seconds, backup arrived. 2 more security guards come speeding up in their little golf cart vehicles, lights flashing, sirens blaring. And they too are declaring that they have been dispatched and the situation is now under control and the girl is back on her feet and doing okay. All very loudly, just in case anyone on campus hadn't yet heard. And they had. So, how should a body be? I had absolutely no idea, but I was pretty sure that it wasn't this. Unfortunately, denial wasn't working out so well. It would for a little bit, and then, bam, I'd end up right back on the ground, sometimes with the help of the handicap doors. And even though I was beginning to acknowledge that I had CMT and that it wasn't going away, at least not yet, I also didn't want it to be my identity. So I enacted a campaign of extreme secrecy. Unfortunately, the harder I tried to hide it, the worse my symptoms seemed to get. When I was 15, I got my first pair of leg braces. They were these heavy cocoons of opaque plastic that went all the way from my knees to my toes. They looked just like Grandma's. I hid my braces under long pants and jeans, and I systematically threw away every pair of shorts and skirts and swimsuits. I even stopped raising my hands in class because I didn't want my classmates to notice that my hands were starting to look different from theirs. And my most important rule was that I always had to walk behind people, never in front, which meant that I was about 30 minutes early to every single class in college. And even to this day, I remained very prompt. As my body got further away from how I thought a body should be, I worried more that it would be all anyone saw when they looked at me. And so I thought, maybe if I just hold really, really, really still in life, that I can get away unseen. I ended up transferring to UC Berkeley in California. And my first summer there, I took a writing class. It was a small class. There were only 7 of us. And halfway through that term, the teacher gave us an assignment to write about something that scared us. To write about something that truly terrified us. I went home that night and I sat at my little desk and I thought, oh, what can I write about? I mean, I could write about like fear of heights, because who isn't afraid of heights? It's a given. Very relatable. Or I could write about the totally deranged dog that lives across the street, which is definitely terrifying. But there was one thing in the back of my mind that was gnawing at me. And this thing was truly terrifying. But there was no way I could possibly write about this thing. No way I could ever put this on paper, let alone turn it into my professor and have her read it about me. I mean, what would she think of me? And as much as I tried to put this out of my mind and write about heights and write about the crazy dog, it was like this thing was begging to be told. And I think it's probably the fastest paper I've ever written. I printed it out and I didn't even pull it out of the printer until morning because I didn't want to touch it. And that night, all I could think was, what have you done? I walked to class the next morning, and I was clutching my little paper, just like this, and I was filled with so much regret. But I told myself, maybe the professor won't even read it. I mean, teachers are busy. They've got a lot to do. And if she does read it and it gets awkward, you know, I'll just tell her it was like a creative writing thing. Totally fictionalized, a completely different Bethany. Sure. So I'm waiting for her to let us turn our papers in when she comes up to the front of the class and she says, "Today, for the first time, you will all be reading your papers aloud to the class." Oh no! I want in that moment to just melt into that chair. If I had one miracle in life that I could turn in at any given time, I would have used it then. I'm looking at all the doors for any escape route, but I can't run. I've got leg braces. I have no choice but to sit there and wait. Meanwhile, the first student comes up to the front of the class, and he reads his paper on his fear of heights. And he phoned it in, too. You know, it wasn't even well written, which somehow made the situation feel worse. And what felt like a second later, the second student came up and also read his paper on his fear of heights. It's an epidemic. And it was clearly the right choice for this paper. And then, Bethany, it's your turn. I don't remember walking up to the front of that class. I think it was probably unconscious. But I do remember standing in front of them and gripping my paper and feeling like there were a million tiny little eyeballs on me in that moment. But I read. The thing that scares me, the thing that terrifies me like no other, is something that I have to do every day. It's something that I have to do just to get to class, to be here with you. And it's something that the rest of you don't even think anything about. And that thing is crossing the street. It's crossing the 4 lanes of terrifying traffic from Oxford to Addison every morning. Because I have a neurological disease called Charcot-Marie-Tooth. And every time I step off that curb, I wonder if today is going to be the day that my left leg doesn't talk to my right and I fall down in that street and I can't get back up. And every time I step off that curb, I wonder, what are the other people in the cars thinking? What are the pedestrians thinking? And I know what they're thinking. They're thinking, why does she walk so slow? What's wrong with her? Hurry up. And every time that I step off that curb, I wonder if today is going to be the day that I fall down in that street and I can't get back up. I finish my paper and there's just complete silence in that room. Until finally, one of my classmates, a jock with bleach blonde hair and blue eyes, gorgeous, who's never spoken to me before, looks at me with tears in his eyes, and he says, "Bethany, we are all in awe of you." And I realized that I faced a way bigger fear that day than crossing the street. And that was the fear of revealing myself to others, to my classmates, to my peers, and risking their rejection. And it was only by being willing to stand in that fear and to just full on feel it that I was able to move through it and truly connect with my classmates for the very first time. In high school, I had been so worried that my classmates would judge me, that I never gave them a chance to know me. And I wish so much that I could go back And I could tell myself, don't hide away and miss those opportunities. Because it's only when you're willing to reveal yourself and to risk that you live authentically and with true freedom. And you can actually connect with people for the first time. I admit that I have often had to be physically forced into facing my fears, just like I did in front of that class. Enter Josh, who I met and fell in love with at age 18. Josh was a computer science and physics double major, as if one of those weren't enough, at Carnegie Mellon University. But Josh seemed to find me much more challenging and much more confusing than any of his studies. And I found him just as challenging, because Josh would challenge my logic, which I wasn't used to. And one of the things Josh decided to challenge first was my conviction that I could never, ever again wear shorts because I had braces. And I have a short reading which I think captures this situation and mutual frustration very well. Over the years, I'd had several family members commiserate with me over my struggles with bracing and fashion. They had helped me try to come up with ways to hide or disguise my braces. Bootcut jeans, bell bottoms, long skirts, leg warmers. But I couldn't remember any of them ever suggesting I just let them be seen. And I definitely had never met anyone who reacted as Josh did, which seemed to be a fundamental incapability of understanding why I would possibly need to hide them. It just did not compute for him. At first, his reactions were frustrating and seemed unempathetic. He just did not get it. But each time we had the same conversation, I'm hot, wear shorts, I can't, why not? It started to seep into my own way of thinking about myself. Why not? I knew the answer. I felt embarrassed of my leg braces, ashamed. Why? I was scared of the world seeing me as I saw myself, that they would judge me as harshly as I judged myself, because I was really embarrassed of myself, of my body, of my disability. But again, why? It would have been easy if turning off a fear were as easy as flipping a switch. Instead, it usually involves confronting the fear head on, and hopefully, it isn't as bad as you thought it would be. I went to Target and picked out a pair of shorts from the juniors section. They were pale blue with a pink floral print and deliberately frayed bottom. And they were short. At 19, they were still more or less age appropriate, but I wasn't shopping for my 19-year-old self. I was shopping for the girl in high school who never had the courage to wear cute shorts like the other girls in her class. The shorts sat in my drawer untouched for a few weeks, until one day I stood up, took off my jeans, slipped on the shorts, and walked out of the house. I kept walking down the sidewalk and all the way to the busy downtown streets. I walked up and down the sidewalk past strangers talking on their smartphones, past families trying to hold on to their small children, young women holding armfuls of shopping bags strolling in and out of little boutiques, past restaurant and shop vendors trying to grab the attention of the chronically inattentive. I walked until I grew tired, and then I sat on a bench on the edge of the sidewalk. I watched them walking by me, looking at their faces, searching them, but they weren't looking at me at all. I was waiting for something to happen, and nothing was happening at all, except that my pasty legs were finally getting a breeze. When I met Josh, I hoped that he could learn to accept the parts of my body that were not ideal. What I hadn't bargained for was that he would question the validity of my thoughts and fundamentally not understand why I considered these parts of myself to be flaws. He thought I was beautiful, without any qualifications. No, despite this, or in spite of that. I tried to dismiss away Josh and his strange ideas by telling myself that he was wired differently than other people. And while it was sweet and refreshing and all, I couldn't listen to him. But when I did listen once, and I let the world see my braces and nothing happened, it was like taking a pin out. I saw myself closer to how he did, and I let go of the rest. I was beginning to see that maybe how a body should be is just brave enough to not let the opinions of others stop us from achieving what we want to achieve. I put that bravery to the test one day by walking to class at Berkeley in my braces and shorts, quite short. And it was a good day for it because it was about 90 degrees in the California heat. Unfortunately, it was a mile walk to this class, and I had to traverse a very large hill to get there. I was only a third of the way up the hill, and I was struggling. My legs were visibly shaking because they were so tired. I had to stop every few steps just to catch my breath. And when I did, I looked up, and at the top of the hill, I saw two guys sitting there watching me. And immediately, all of those old narratives came back into my head. And I thought, oh, what are they thinking about me? I mean, obviously, they're thinking about me. I'm standing here in full brace glory before them, just their personal sunny day spectacle. Are they trying to guess what's wrong? I'm walking even worse than usual because my legs are so tired. And I try to keep them out of my sight even though they are right ahead of me. I keep trudging up the hill when one of them shouts out to me, "You can do it! We believe in you." And his voice was kind and encouraging. I looked up at them and I saw he had long hair, scruffy beard, and I liked to think he had sparkling blue eyes. But he was really too far to tell. You just get a sense sometimes. And I shouted back, "Thank you," and kept trudging slowly up that hill. A couple minutes later, still watching me, he shouted back, "I love you, sister." And I shouted back, "I love you too." Remember, this is Berkeley. And I marched up that hill, feeling stronger at the top. because I was beginning to see that I could be seen, really seen, and that could be good. I walk funny, and sometimes people notice, because it is built in for us to notice. But what we do when we notice is entirely a choice. And what other people think when they see me walking is entirely their choice, not mine. And I try not to concern myself with the choices of others and with things I can't control. Along the way, I've also discovered something delightful, which is most of the time people aren't judging me at all. And sometimes they are rooting for me. When I'm standing in front of the class, or I'm walking up a really, really big hill. I asked my father once, "Do you feel bad for giving me the gene for CMT?" He said, "Hell no. What about all of the great genes I gave you? The intelligence gene, the witty gene, the good looks gene. You don't get to pick and choose. Why are you focused on that one gene?" He was right. Yes, this one gene has had a big impact, but it's also only one in over 40,000. It is also not all of me. I also have adventurer genes that have taken me to live in London, that have taken me and my now husband, Josh, to the Eiffel Tower in Paris, that have taken me to the skies of Peru to sit on top of one of the wonders of the world, Machu Picchu. I have scientist genes that I used to get a degree in metabolic biology. I have, believe it or not, athlete genes from mom's side that express themselves through fundraising walks every year to raise money to cure my disease. I have author genes that allowed me to write and finish a book and to be here sharing my story with you. I don't want one gene to dictate my entire image of myself. I can and still do great things. And so can you. When I was so worried that my disease would be all other people saw when they looked at me, it was really all that I saw. And now I see a heck of a lot more. Now I also see you. Your struggles, your triumphs. And as you all are climbing your own hills, know that I am out there in the world shouting to you, you can do it. I love you, brother. I love you, sister. Thank you very much.
This program was recorded on March 15th, 2018 at the Ann Arbor District Library.